স্টার্ট করছি তাহলে।
এটা খুব কঠিন বিষয়।
কোনটা, করোনাটা?
না না, এই টিউবুলোপ্যাথি কিছু বুঝি না।
কঠিন জিনিসই তো সহজ করে দেবে।
So we will be discussing about tubulopathies. Obviously, the idea will be to not go into the depth of it, and have some ideas which will be useful for clinical practice, and secondly also useful for writing short notes or any cases in the long case, short case, which is unlikely to happen. So primarily it is like sort of identifying the stripe. So whether it is a zebra or a cheetah or a giraffe, and hopefully by the end of the talk, this is what we are aiming for, that we should be able to be identifying what sort of underlying disorder it's more likely to be. Brief overview of the physiology. Again, this is a big subject, and you can have a dedicated lecture for this. And at least in the MD exams, you can get a short note on reabsorptions of, say, sodium or something like that. The average length of the tubule is 3 centimeters. What is important to understand is that the glomerulus filters about 182 liters of fluid, whereas we on the average say pee about 1.5 liter. So this itself can show us that how important tubule is, which we often don't give that important. Even in nephrology, tubule is often described as the step brother, sister, something like that. But without tubule, we will be literally at sea, because it was the development of tubules which made us move from the sea to the land. The most important thing about reabsorption is the sodium, and as shown in this figure, that most of the sodium is reabsorbed in the proximal convoluted tubule, almost 70% of them. Then another 25% will be reabsorbed in the ascending limb, and some of it in the distal convoluted tubule. The collecting duct absorbs a very small percentage, but that's important, because it is in the collecting duct that the fine tuning happens. That's how we remember. We have to remember the common channels which are involved. The sodium potassium 2 chloride channels in the loop of Henle, where the furosemide acts, the sodium chloride channel where the thiazide acts, the sodium potassium hydrogen exchanger where the spironolactone or acts, or the amiloride, and then here we have the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. There is various ways in classifying tubulopathies. This is one of the ways. Like you can have a proximal tubular disorder. So starting from the proximal tubular disorders. Proximal tubular disorders can be classified into two parts. You can think of it where there is a selective transport defect. Say in cystinuria, as we all know, that there is only defect in the cystine transport. Or we can have the Fanconi syndrome. Fanconi syndrome where you are losing everything, and Fanconi syndrome again has a long DD. So once you diagnose a Fanconi syndrome, particularly in pediatric age group, you have to be sure that you are ruling out all the other disorders like cystinosis, Danes, and those with the liver problems like tyrosinemia, Wilson, galactosemia, etc. Then we have the disorder of the distal nephron, where we have got the of the the Lasix and a gitelmin, a mimic of the thiazide, and we have a pseudo hypoaldosteronism. So these are the salt wasting defect. At the same time, we can have salt retaining defect, and this causes hypertension. And at least in pediatric nephrology, this is an important short note. And I've seen even in DNB giving a short note of this. These are the low renin hypertension. All this. Then we have got the disorders of the magnesium reabsorption, the familial hypomagnesemia with hypercalciuria. We diagnosed one last year in ICH. And then disorder of water reabsorption, which is the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Very important, when to suspect renal tubular disorders. So this is the most important take-home message for any pediatrician. So a child who is having a failure to thrive, growth retardation, this is very important. We are currently seeing a child, Priyankar, I'm not sure whether he is logged in or not. He also knows this child. The child is otherwise completely fine, but is not growing at par with the peers. But because the development, etc., is completely well, nobody was concerned. Now the child developed HSP, and while treating HSP, they found that the sodium was low. There is a previous documentation also that the sodium is low. And cutting a long story short, we found that the child is having a SIDH. But this is a chronic SIDH. So why did I flag this up? Is that if you're having a failure to thrive, then you should have done an electrolyte before, but nobody had done the electrolytes, and it was missed. Polyuria, polydipsia, preference for the savory food. As we all know that children per se don't like salty food. Like within 1 to 3 years, they don't like salty food. They don't like pickles. The taste for pickle is an acquired taste. But if you find a child, say 1 year old, liking pickles or eating lots of chips, then maybe we have got some problem. Refractory rickets, we all know. Renal calculi and nephrocalcinosis, we all know. Unexplained hypertension, we already mentioned those 3-4 conditions where you have a low PRA but a hypertension. Lab parameters which suggest that something tubular is maybe happening is a hypercholoremic metabolic acidosis, metabolic alkalosis with or without hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, hypercalciuria with normal serum calcium. So all of this, one should be thinking that there might be something tubular happening. So with that sort of a background, we will now go into a few case scenarios, and hopefully by the end of it, we will be able to differentiate the zebras from the giraffes. This child, I have presented it in lot of previous CMEs, etc. So many of you might have heard this case. A girl from Bangladesh presented to us in CMC below with failure to thrive, polyuria and polydipsic. Polydipsic in the sense that the mother said that she used to drink her own urine. So if you don't stop her, the child will drink her own urine. That much of polydipsic. This was the initial investigation. I'll give the PGTs 10 seconds to have a look at it. So what abnormality we found was the phosphate was low. This is not highlighted here, but the alkaline phosphatase was high, potassium was low, and the child was having a normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So since we are working in ICH and we have got a lot of cultures of doing anion gap and the normal anion gap, so I'm sure most of the PGTs must have realized that we are dealing with renal tubular acidosis, because that's what a normal anion gap metabolic acidosis happens, looks like. We will come back to this child later on. We move to the second case. This was a child of a doctor. All these cases happened like right after we came back to Kolkata. So a 1.5-year-old boy, it was a pediatrician child who came mainly with failure to thrive, polyuria, and was severely constipated. So the main problem was constipated. The polyuria was not discovered and failure to thrive. So these two were the main problem: very constipated and failure to thrive. While workup, they did an ultrasound scan and showed, as you can see, nephrocalcinosis. And again, the initial biochem is given, and again the same pattern of a normal anion gap acidosis. Another child with recurrent respiratory tract infection, an 11-month-old girl with failure to thrive, severe failure to thrive, you can see here only. And 3 episodes of renal respiratory tract infection. And here also what we see is the sodium is low, but the potassium is very high, 8. And the bicarbonate is low. So high potassium, low bicarbonate, and a normal anion gap. Again, the same pattern, but here we have hyperkalemia. And again, and I'm sure, or I will be very depressed if most of the PGTs don't know this, that it is a type 4 RTA. So how do we, so the first two might have been a type 1 or type 2, something like that. We will discuss it later on, and this is most probably type 4 renal tubular acidosis. Similar sort of a picture in a 4-month-old girl. So here also we see a low sodium, high potassium, and metabolic acidosis. So similar, failure to a type 4 RTA. So what have we seen till now? First child was failure to thrive with normal anion gap acidosis but hypokalemia. Second child was a similar case but with nephrocalcinosis. Third and fourth were both type 4 RTA. How do we approach? This is an algorithm. We'll just walk through it. So we have got hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, right? And actually, when we say hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, that is what it is: normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So one of the first thing to do is to look at the urine anion gap. Again, this is something which we are regularly doing in ICH. And if the urine anion gap is positive, then that means it is a renal tubular acidosis. If the urine anion gap is negative, then it can be either extrarenal loss or something else. But if it is positive, then it is renal tubular acidosis. And if the potassium is high, then it is more likely to be type 4. If the potassium is low, it is more likely to be type 1 or type 2. Then you can look at the number of, you can look at the urine pH. You can look at the fractional expression of bicarbonate. You can look at the urine and blood carbon dioxide difference and come up with whether it is a proximal or distal RTA. So let's go back to our child. So in first child, the one came from Bangladesh with polyuria, polydipsia. We can see here that the urine anion gap was positive, but the child is losing everything. So is also having some amount of sugar also. And was also having amount of phosphate. X-ray was consistent with rickets and had a bilateral hydronephrosis. In fact, I'm not making this up. This child was subjected to pyeloplasty in Bangladesh because of suspected pelvic-ureteric junction obstruction. Serum anion gap positive, urine anion gap positive. We do normally something called the furosemide challenge test. So we give a dose of furosemide and then test the urine pH. And if the urine pH is below 5.5, it is proximal. If it is above 5.5, it is distal. So we have a proximal RTA. We did a tubular phosphate which showed that the child is hardly reabsorbing any phosphate. So it is phosphaturia was established. We looked into the eyes and it had 16 crystals. It was missed on the first time because Vellore doesn't have a very great ophthalmology department. Among the various other departments which also are not great, but unfortunately Bengalis don't know about it, even the Bengali doctors. So they missed the cystinosis, and then it was discovered by, then we referred to the another hospital, and it was discovered that the child has cystinosis. Subsequently, we had a genetic done when we were following up this child in Calcutta, and the genetic was also proven for cystinosis, and the child was put on cysteamine, which is not available in India. At least at that time, it was not at all available. Now you can import it from outside, as Prabhas knows it. What about our second child? So the first child has a diagnosis of proximal RTA cystinosis. Second child, same thing we did. So a normal anion gap, positive, a normal anion gap, positive urinary anion gap. Furosemide challenge test here is different. So the pH is above 6.1 and hypercalciuria. And I'm sure every one of you must have got the diagnosis that this is a distal RTA. And just look at it, the amount of growth that the child had within few months. And the only thing that we did was just give bicarbonate. That resolved the constipation also, because once the potassium got corrected, the polyuria got corrected, constipation also got corrected. And we again proved it with genetics. Now, what about our two children with type 4 RTA? Now, this was interesting. So both of them had a normal anion gap, and the urine anion gap on the first and the second were also positive. So type 4 RTA, we are quite sure. But what is the condition? And then, like, what is the underlying reason for the type 4 RTA? There is a huge list of type 4 RTA, and it's very important that all of us should go through it, because it helps us in identifying various subtle disorders, including like acute interstitial nephritis can cause type 4 RTA, SLE can cause type 4 RTA. So bladder outlet obstruction can cause type 4 RTA. So there is a big list of type 4 RTA. We did something called TTG, transtubular potassium gradient, and this transtubular potassium gradient was low. So what is transtubular potassium gradient? So this is how you calculate it. You need a paired sample of urine and serum, osmolarity, and potassium. There are certain caveats before calculating that, which like the urinary sodium has to be more than 10. But if you have a hyperkalemia and your TTG is not above 7, that means only two things. It means that either you have a aldosterone deficiency, or the aldosterone is there, but it is not working on the receptors. So I'm repeating, this is a very important concept. In the presence of hyperkalemia and a GFR above 15, if you have a TTKG which is less than 7, that means that either there is no aldosterone, or the aldosterone is there but the receptor is not there. Like there is a receptor registered. So this is what just a recap of how the aldosterone work. I'll not go through the details of that. So in our children, we did a aldosterone level, and in scenario 1, we see that the aldosterone is very, very high. So in scenario 1, it means that aldosterone is there, but the receptor is not working. What can that be? That is the pseudo hypoaldosteronism. And in scenario 3, the aldosterone is normal, not that high. So it is a aldosterone deficiency. So first one was a pseudo hypoaldosteronism type 1, and the second one was ultimately found to have a congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So hopefully these cases have been understood by the PGTs. So pseudo hypoaldosteronism, where the aldosterone is lot, but there is a receptor defect in the ENaC channels. Moving on to our fourth case, a 5-year-old boy, failure to thrive, presented with a sudden onset of generalized body swelling, weakness and respiratory difficulty, intubated and ventilated. But what was remarkable was that things improved very soon. Like as soon as the child was intubated, ventilated, given some maintenance fluid, the child was again having good respiratory effort. This happened 2-3 times. They had gone to the same hospital. I'll not name the hospital, and it was said that most probably it is because he's not having lots of chocolates. Why? Because he was having low sodium and low potassium. And then was referred to us. What we find here is that the classical thing of an alkalosis with hypokalemia. And urine, which is showing that, so if your potassium is low, your urine should be retaining potassium. But here the urine is losing potassium. If your chloride is low, your urine should be retaining chloride, but that's also not happening. And the calcium creatinine ratio is high. So the child is having hypercalciuria. So the diagnosis was Bartter syndrome. Again, Bartter syndrome itself is a separate lecture. 4 types of Bartter syndromes because of various channel defect. I'll not go into the details of that. We did a genetic, and it was because of the ROMK channel, this channel defect. Gitelman syndrome is a milder variety of Bartter syndrome, where there are a couple of things which happens here which does not happen in Bartter syndrome. One is the hypomagnesemia, although it is not an all or none loss, but for PGT levels, I think this is acceptable that in Bartter you do not get the hypomagnesemia, in Gitelman you do. And in Bartter you get hypercalciuria, in Gitelman you get hypocalciuria. But the pattern is the same: failure to thrive with alkalosis and hypokalemia. Moving on to our next child with hypertension. If you remember, we had right away at the start said that one of the presentation of tubular disorder can also be hypertension. So 2-year-old boy, polyuria, failure to thrive with a persistent hypertension, and the family history of hypertension also. And what we see here is hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis, metabolic alkalosis. So a pattern is a metabolic alkalosis, hypokalemia, and hypertension. We did a renin level which was very low, and a aldosterone also low. So if you remember, we had said that there is 3 or 4 differential diagrams. That we did not respond, but diagnosis is characterized by hypokalemia, metabolic alkalosis, low PRA, aldosterone, normal urinary steroid, and this is important. They do not respond, but respond. Sorry, they do not respond to spironolactone, but respond to antichloride. So how do you metabolic alkalosis? Urinary chloride. The unity chloride. Hello, can you hear me?
স্ক্রিনটা চলে গেল রে।
রাজীবটা স্ক্রিনটা শেয়ার করো।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ওটা আমার এটাই কেটে গিয়েছিল। আবার
নেট কানেকশনটা বোধহয় একটু গড়বড়।
ওকে,
স্ক্রিন শেয়ার হয়নি
এখন হয়েছে? না
না, হয়নি।
আবার করছি।
তোমার নেটটা কি প্রবলেম আছে?
এক সেকেন্ড দেখছি আমি।
স্লাইড শো করো এবারে। এলো তো?
এখন এসেছে?
একবার এসে চলে গেল তো। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে, এবার স্লাইড শো দাও।
এখন আসেনি?
আসছে না।
আসছে
না,
হ্যাঁ
এবারে এসছে। এবারে
আচ্ছা,
এসছে,
আমি
স্লাইড
stop
শো দাও।
হ্যাঁ
স্লাইড শো করো।
যা, আমি তো আবার স্টপ শেয়ার করে দিই।
কেন স্টপ শেয়ার করছো? স্লাইড শো করো। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
আবার এইবার এসছে।
এবার স্লাইডের উপরে একটা ক্লিক করো, স্লাইডের উপরে একটা
Okay.
পুশটা ক্লিক করে তারপর নেক্সট স্লাইড করবে।
হ্যাঁ।
বলো। হ্যাঁ, ঠিক আছে।
So I hope till this slide it was okay. Everybody had heard about this, that this was a child with a Liddle syndrome. And we were discussing about how to approach a child with metabolic alkalosis, mainly for the chloride. If the urinary chloride is high, then there is a kidney problem. Normal blood pressure means a Bartter Gitelman. High blood pressure means we should be looking for either aldosterone, and it can be Liddle fetal pressure. On the other hand, if it is less than 10 urinary chloride, then it is the extrarenal loss, and we all know about cystic fibrosis because it is called a pseudobarter. Also vomiting, NG drainage, etc. We already mentioned about the ENaC. No, ENaC is that when the receptor for the sodium potassium thing in the collecting ducts. Now, we have mentioned ENaC here twice. One was when we were discussing pseudo hypoaldosteronism, where the ENaC channel was depressed, was not working. So lots of aldosterone, but the ENaC channel not working. And you have a pseudo hypoaldosteronism. And in Liddle, it is the reverse. Here, the ENaC channel is hyperactive. Similarly, we mentioned this channel also, NCCT, when we were discussing Gitelman. So, in that channel not working means sodium loss, and that is Gitelman. That channel overworking means Gordon syndrome. Gordon syndrome is very rare. Like in my life, I have diagnosed only one and have seen another two. Moving on to our next child. This is from my PGI Chandigarh. This 8-year-old female, recurrent admission with pyonephrosis. His past history of removal of stones. Virtually ভর্তি হতো, পাথর বার করা হতো, আবার ভর্তি হতো, আবার পাথর বার করা হতো. But and most of the time getting admitted with pyonephrosis. But nobody had bothered to look at the urine. And this is a classical case of cystinuria. This is a study done from the Great Ormond Street Hospital, but a very important take-home message for us is that nephrolithiasis should not be ignored, because 50% cases of nephrolithiasis in pediatric will have some sort of underlying disorder. And that's very important that they should be worked up. And that's very important. That's another reason that nephrolithiasis should be referred to the medical side and also not to the surgical side, because in the surgical side, all they are bothered is that stonta bar karo, and that's it. This was an 11-month-old boy seen in Calcutta only, admitted with generalized tonic-clonic convulsion, and was noted to have a hypernatremia. Urine RE was normal, and the ultrasound showed gross hydronephrosis. Because of polyuria, we did a water deprivation test, which was positive. We challenged with vasopressin, which was negative, and this NDI. My talk, will immediately said that the water deprivation test should not have been done. Why? Because the sodium was already above 160. But anyway, it was done in this child for medicine, and so this of nephrogenic insipidus. What was the hydronephrosis? Because of the huge volume of urine that they produce, it's quite common for them to have nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So here the pattern is failure to thrive with polyuria. And the this insipidus again we can have central nephrogenic, we all know, and then in the nephrogenic we acquired also, like a post-obstructive dialysis, dysplasia. We already know that doing the excluded CDs, LTs, and tubular acidosis, then you go for the pure sample of some urine osmolar, and that can be in diabetes, whether or central, that will be helped by the saturation test. This is the most child presented with the prolonged CRT. Here, initial investigations, the first number, my connection is playing up.
রাজীব দা স্ক্রিনটা চলে গেছে গো আবার।
আমি আবার করছি। এখন আসছে তো?
না তোমার কি
হ্যালো,
না আসেনি এখনো, তোমার নেটটা কি প্রবলেম করছে? নেট কানেকশনটা?
হ্যাঁ
না এখনো আসেনি।
এটা এখন ঠিক আছে?
হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে,
এখন এসেছে?
হ্যাঁ এসছে।
So so again, going back to this child who presented with a failure to thrive with the antenatal history of polyhydramnios and initially presented in shock. Initial thing was sodium low, potassium low, bicarbonate low, creatinine on the higher side. By 18 hours, if we look at it, potassium was still low, bicarbonate is still low, and the child had a normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. So we thought that this is a child renal tubular acidosis. But sodium, which was initially low, has now gone up to 142. Now, if you look at it, the trend, slowly the sodium went on rising, potassium remained hypokalemic, and the child who had initially presented with hypokalemia, with metabolic acidosis became metabolic alkalosis. So there is a dramatic change over the 8-9 days. Throughout, the urine output remained high, 7.6, 8.2. This is all ml per kilo per hour. The urine output remained high. So what are we dealing with this? If we look at this 18-hour picture, we would say renal tubular acidosis. If you look at this D3, D5, D9 pictures, we would say metabolic alkalosis, means Bartter syndrome. But in a Bartter syndrome, why will be a sodium high? So are we dealing with diabetes insipidus? We all know that in Bartter syndrome, the renin is high. So we did a renin level and it was very high. But then we also did a desmopressing, we also did a paired serum and urine osmolality. And in hyponatremia, what do you expect? You expect a high serum osmolality and a urine osmolality will be which will be appropriate for the hyponatremia. But here, despite a high serum osmolality, the urine osmolality is low. And that we all know is diabetes insipidus. And this diabetes insipidus were not responding to desmopressine. So what are we dealing with? Renal tubular acidosis, or Bartter, or diabetes insipidus. This happened a few years back and I didn't have any clue about this. So we discussed it among our all faculties. None of them had any clue. I called up Bagga sir also. He also didn't have any clue. And then I emailed Detlef Bockenhorst. He is in, he was my mentor in Get On Street and is supposed to be one of the premier gurus of tubulopathy. And he said that it is Bartter syndrome, and Bartter syndrome can present sometime like diabetes insipidus. And to prove, he did the mutation study free of cost, and it was Bartter syndrome. And in fact, it is what the mind doesn't know, the eye doesn't see. It has been previously reported, I mean not very commonly, but it has been reported. And this person, Bisse, he's in Montreal. He is the devota of diabetes insipidus. So he receives blood from all over the world for genetic analysis, and they said that after ruling out the common cause of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, that is the vasopressin and the aquaporin mutation, their next gene that they look for is for the Bartter syndrome. And I don't know, I don't think I have put it in this slide. Subsequently, this child, and we also diagnosed another child with distal RTA in Apollo with with nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. And we had a child with cystinosis with nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. And this case series was published, I believe, last year in Indian Pediatrics. So genetic study is very useful. Again, this study was published by Detlef only, where they showed a significant percentage of children with tubular disorder had genetic. That's not a new story, but a significant percentage of them, genetic sort of changed their diagnosis. So clinically, they were thinking of something else, and on genetic, they came up with something else. I'll skip this because this is a old slide. We have got more cases than this. But yes, in our case series also, we found that hypomagnesemia with calciuria, we usually think of, I said that hypercalciuria does not happen in Bartter, but I said that it is not all or none law. And we had a child with hypercalciuria. And so in our case also, and those with diabetes insipidus presentation turning out to be Bartter or renal tubular acidosis, all this happened. So in conclusion, this is a slide taken from Detlef only. This is very important. You have to remember the pattern. Proximal tubular pattern is usually hypokalemia with a metabolic acidosis which is normal, and there will be a loss of protein, loss of calcium, loss of sugar. So a sort of a Fanconi sort of a thing. And proximal tubule is mostly mimicking furosemide. TAL pattern, sorry, TAL is mimicking furosemide. Proximal tubule is Fanconi syndrome. TAL pattern will be again low potassium, but it will be more of a metabolic alkalosis, and calcium will be lost. So that is Bartter or Lasix pattern. DCT, usually the calcium is low and magnesium is also low, and that is Gitelman. And collecting duct, usually the sodium is low, potassium is high. And if you are having a hypertension, you think of something else. If you are not having hypertension, you think of something else. So primarily it is putting in this pattern, and I hope that we have been able to discuss or understand and recognize some of the patterns. Thank you. Any question? Sir, এটা বন্ধ আছে।
সিস্টিনোসিসে যে তুই নেফ্রোক্যালসিনোসিস পেলি অত সিভিয়ার
কিসে?
সিস্টিনোসিস
না না, সিস্টিনোসিস নেফ্রোক্যালসিনোসিস পাইনি।
ফার্স্ট কেসটা যেটা বাংলাদেশ থেকে এসেছিল,
না ওটাতে তো নেফ্রোক্যালসিনোসিস ছিল না, ছিল কি? ওটা সেকেন্ড কেসে ছিল বোধহয়।
হ্যাঁ
আমি দেখছি। Sometimes you can get nephrocalcinosis and cystinosis also, but না ফার্স্ট কেসে ছিল না স্যার।
রিকেটসটা পেলি তো ফার্স্ট কেসে?
Second case ছিল. The first case was cystinosis without any nephrocalcinosis. Second case was with nephrocalcinosis, and it was distal RTA.
আর রিকেটস ছিল
যখন বললি আমি সব বুঝে গেলাম, কিন্তু তারপরে মনে হলো সব ভুলে গেল। আমি কি সুন্দর পরিষ্কার সব বুঝে গেলাম।
না রিকেটস কোন কেসটাই ছিল? রিকেটস তো ডিস্টালে।
রিকেটসটা ছিল স্যার দুটোতেই ছিল, ফার্স্টেও ছিল সেকেন্ডেও ছিল। First one was, so I'll just summarize the cases. The first case one was the proximal RTA. যে এসেছিল with polyuria, polydipsia, and we'll have the same pattern, that is normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, কিন্তু ওখানে there will be low phosphate urine sugar থাকবে, তখনই আমার flag এসে জানবে কি যে এটা most probably proximal RTA, and then you start thinking of differential diagnosis of proximal RTA which we thought of, and this came back as cystinosis. Second child was again the same pattern of failure to thrive, metabolic acidosis with normal anion gap, কিন্তু এখানে was hypercalciuria, nephrocalcinosis. That is more common with distal RTA. Third and fourth was again with the same pattern of failure to thrive with metabolic acidosis, normal anion gap, কিন্তু এই দুটোতেই hyperkalemia ছিল। So hyperkalemia থাকলে আমরা type 4 RTA ভাবছি, আর আমরা তখন টিটিকেজি দেখতে পারি, ট্রান্সটিউবুলার পটাশিয়াম গ্রেডিয়েন্ট। ট্রান্সটিউবুলার পটাশিয়াম গ্রেডিয়েন্ট যদি কম আসে, দ্যাট মিনস আইদার অ্যালডোস্টেরনের ডেফিসিয়েন্সি আছে অর অ্যালডোস্টেরন প্রচুর আছে কিন্তু রিসেপ্টর ডিফেক্ট আছে। So you look at the aldosterone. If the aldosterone is high, then it is pseudo hyperaldosteronism, that is receptor defect. If the aldosterone is low, then it can be some of the causes of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So this is in nutshell the pattern of tubular disorder with metabolic acidosis. Next we have a pattern of tubular disorder with metabolic alkalosis. এখানে আমাদের জানতে হবে কি hypertension আছে কি hypertension নেই। Hypertension with metabolic alkalosis, we start thinking of ওই কিছু কিছু সিনড্রোম আছে যেখানে PRA কম থাকে, রেনিন কম থাকে, and this is Liddle, Gordon এইগুলো। On the other hand, metabolic alkalosis যেখানে normotension আছে, that is more likely আর যেখানে renal loss of chloride হচ্ছে, the urinary chloride is high, তাহলে আমাদের বার্টার ডিটেলমেন্ট ভাবতে হবে। সো এটা একটা প্যাটার্ন আর একটা প্যাটার্ন হয়ে গেল। and lastly we have a pattern of polyuria. Polyuria কিন্তু মেটাবলিক অ্যালকালোসিস নেই, মেটাবলিক অ্যাসিডোসিস নেই, সিকেডি নেই। সো সেটা হবে ডায়াবেটিস ইনসিপিডাস এর একটা প্যাটার্ন। আর again আমাদের ডায়াবেটিস ইনসিপিডাস মাথায় রাখতে হবে কি দ্যাট ক্রেনিয়াল or নেফ্রোজেনিক হলে then again differential diagnosis of nephrogeny. Usually it is receptor mediated, that is aquaporin or vasopressin, কিন্তু আরো অনেকগুলো কজ আছে, এটা মাথায় রাখতে হবে।
বার্টারের চারটে টাইপ আছে, বার্টারে তো পাঁচটা টাইপ এখন বলে না
স্যার?
পাঁচটা টাইপ না চারটে টাইপ না
পাঁচটা টাইপ? হ্যাঁ এখন বলছে পাঁচটা টাইপ। একটা ক্যালসিয়াম সেন্সিং রিসেপ্টর ডিফেক্টটাকে টাইপ 5 বলছে, ওটা অনেকেই বলে অনেকেই বলে না। ক্যালসিয়াম সেন্সিং রিসেপ্টর ডিফেক্টেও বার্টার লেগ প্রেজেন্টেশন, কিন্তু সিম্পল রাখতে গেলে আমরা চারটে টাইপ রাখি। সো দ্য আইডিয়া হোপফুলি পিজিটিরা শুনেছে, কেউ তো রেসপন্ড করেনি, আইদার ইট ওয়াজ very clear or very complicated, কিন্তু they have to go remember the patterns.
আগে একবার একটা কেস প্রেজেন্ট করেছিলি
স্যার শুনতে পাচ্ছেন? স্যার শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
বার্টার উইথ টাইপ 4
স্যার
তুমি বলেছিলে একটা কেস আগে যে বার্টার উইথ ডেফনেস, আর তাতে তুমি লিখেছিলে পেরিফেরাল কন্ডাকশন ডিফেক্ট। মানে হোয়াট ডাজ ইট মিন পেরিফেরাল কন্ডাকশন ডিফেক্ট? কারণ বার্টার যদি উইথ ডেফনেস থাকে, ইট ইজ ইউজুয়ালি সেন্সরি নিউরাল ডেফনেস। তুই পেরিফেরাল কন্ডাকশন ডিফেক্ট বলতে কি বলেছিলি?
না ওটার মধ্যে সেন্ট্রাল ডিফেক্ট পাওয়া যায়নি। মানে ওটার কি বলে ওটাকে, যে বেড়া করে ওটা নরমাল ছিল, তার মানে ওর ডেফনেসটা ছিল বোধহয় অন্য কোনো কারণে, কিন্তু সেন্ট্রাল কারণে ছিল না। সো ইট ইজ আনলাইকলি টু বি আ বার্টিন মিউটেশন। ওটা নিশ্চয়ই আমরা জেনেটিক স্টাডি করেছিলাম, কি বেরিয়েছিল, বার্টিন মিউটেশন বেরিয়েছিল কিনা আমার মনে নেই। আজকাল স্যার
বলেছিলি তুই টাইপ 4 এ তো ডেফনেস থাকে না?
হ্যাঁ
টাইপ 4 এ তো ডেফনেস থাকে
স্যার, অত থাকে না আমার।
যাই হোক, ঠিক আছে। But anyway, it's a very good presentation.
বার্টিন ডিফেক্টে ডেফনেস থাকে। যদি বার্টিন মিউটেশন একটা আছে তাতে ডেফনেস থাকে। হ্যাঁ স্যার, টাইপ 4 এ বিএসএনডি বার্টিন টাইপ 4 এ ডেফনেস থাকে। স্যার তাহলে যাই, কোনো প্রশ্ন? প্রভাস বলেছে ভেরি কমপ্লিকেটেড, আই এম ভেরি সরি, কিন্তু আমার তো মনে হয়েছিল কি দ্যাট প্যাটার্ন recognition is important, and I try to focus on pattern recognition. And what is urine? তো আরেকটা কোশ্চেন এসেছে that urine bicarbonate and carbon dioxide, মানে urinary and serum carbon dioxide, plasma carbon dioxide মানে ডিফারেন্স দেখেও ওটা ইম্পর্টেন্স কি, তো ওটা দেখেও আমরা বলতে পারি প্রক্সিমাল আছে কি ডিস্টাল আছে। কিন্তু যেহেতু আমরা এটা রুটিনলি করি না বলে ওটা কারণ হচ্ছে বিকজ ইউ নিড টু মেজার ইউরিন কার্বন ডাইঅক্সাইড, ইউরিন PCO2, which is you cannot, ideally you should not be using the same blood gas analyzer, because if you use that then you have to recalibrate it. So most of the institute does not allow it, and because the blood gas analyzers are not calibrated for urinary carbon dioxide, it is not a legal document also, but ওটা দিয়েও করা যায়। স্যার আর কোনো প্রশ্ন নেই, যাই?
Thank you,
Huh?
Rajiv.